Call the public hearing of the Prattville City Council to order. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Councilman Strickland. Here. Councilman Wood. Here. Councilman Argo. Councilman Miller. Here. Councilman Reniger.
Here.
Councilman Bowles. Here. Councilman Faint.
This public hearing was called for the express purpose of getting public comment on the proposed redistricting lines for the city of Prattville. This time I'd like to call on our city planner, Mr. Duke, to come forward and give us a brief synopsis before we open it up for public questions, concerns, and comments. Joe.
Yes, sir. Good evening. I'd like to take a few minutes and kind of review some of the information that was discussed at the June 20th public hearing and kind of bring everybody up to date. I think that might be necessary since we had one person besides all of us that had to be here at the public hearing back in June. So we'll back up just a little bit. As y'all well know, between 2000 and 2010, the city of Prattville added roughly 9,657 people, increasing our population from 24,303 to 33,960. That population growth was not well distributed throughout our city limits, and that caused several of our city council districts to be larger than the others. As you well know, that there's supposed to be equal distribution of population as much as possible between those districts, and that ideal district population that you'd be looking for is 4,851 folks. This council appointed a subcommittee earlier this year to take a look at the districts and make any adjustments to the districts that were needed. That subcommittee was Councilman Argo, Councilman Wood, and Councilman Strickland. And they've basically been meeting since early in the summer to review the districts and make some proposed adjustments. The first item that was proposed was the adoption of a redistricting process. It was discussed at the June 20th hearing and then subsequently adopted at your council meeting on June the 21st. That policy, among other items, is available on the city website, and I invite anyone who's interested to take a look at that. Policy covered several items, but just to hit a few was to make sure that districts are, the population is equally distributed among the districts, that district boundaries are maintained where possible, that districts should contain whole neighborhoods where possible, and that citizens be given an opportunity to evaluate proposed districts or proposed adjustments and present alternative plans. The policy resolution also set a schedule that puts you on course to adopt a redistricting ordinance by October of this year. At our June the 20th hearing, we discussed several of the items that locally and nationally influence redistricting and the process. We discussed a court case from the late 1980s that is titled Dillard versus Crenshaw that created basically district representation for city councils, county commissions, and school boards throughout the state. Was that as a result of that lawsuit, you went from an at-large representation to 7 council districts, and also created District 2, which was a minority majority district at that time. As a result of that lawsuit, as best I can tell, I wasn't present with the city at the time, but as best we can tell, that also led to the separation of District 2 geographically into basically what is a north portion and a south portion. So that was 1992 when that was put in place. On a national level, redistricting is influenced by what's known as Department of Justice preclearance. As a result of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, several states and their sub-jurisdictions are subject to review of any action that impacts voting. Redistricting or annexation or other changes to representation have to be reviewed by the Department of Justice to make sure that there is no violation of the Voting Rights Act. In that review, the DOJ is looking for whether or not there is first a discriminatory purpose, and secondly, whether there is a retrogressive effect. Retrogressive effect really is looking at whether or not, whether intended or not, minority representation is decreased. With that, that brings us to the plan that's before you. At your last council meeting, the subcommittee reported to you their proposed plan, and that has been available on the city website for roughly 2 weeks. You have a copy of it. It's here on the board before you. The plan that's presented equalizes population and, as much as possible, maintain district lines. It sought to redistribute the significant population or extra population in District 4, which equated to roughly 4,226 folks, to the surrounding districts. So you can see that District 4 has gotten significantly smaller geographically, but population-wise, it's basically equal to the others. The plan seeks to maintain District 2 in its form as it has existed since 1992. The goal was to keep that a minority-majority district. Unfortunately, we were unable to accomplish that. As you can see from the chart that you have before you, the black population has been reduced to 45.5%. And the primary reason for that is that minority population has become better distributed throughout the city. As we've grown, housing options have become available, and folks have moved to different areas of the city rather than those traditionally minority neighborhoods. At this point, I'll be glad to answer any questions from the City Council.
Any questions of the city planner from the council before opening it up to the floor? Councilman Bowles?
Getting back to District 2, and this might be more for David. If we get into a lawsuit over this, are we going to be able to win that lawsuit?
I'm choosing my words carefully. I would ever hesitate to talk about lawsuits in public. Okay. But if you were to instruct me to do so, then I can give my opinion. I'm not trying to shy away from it. I cannot give you an indefinite yes or no. I think it will pass muster. Okay, good. If that's DOJ plays a huge part in this. Mm-hmm. So we've got to have the pre-clearance on anything we do, because Dillard versus Crenshaw dealt with basically the southeastern United States. Right. And it dealt, as Joel said, it dealt with municipalities and counties and board of educations. So I think we're okay. Good, thank you.
Any other questions for our attorney or our city planner from the council, that is? I'm going to open it up to the floor of anyone in the council chambers that would like to address the council on the proposed redistricting lines. Is there anyone like to come before the council or ask our city planner anything about this? Raise your hand. Yes, sir. Come to the microphone, if you will, and identify yourself by your name and your address, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity. My name is Ed Packard. I live at 809 Cottage Lane here in the city of Prattville. I do have written comments that I will provide to the city clerk, if that's okay with y'all.
Sure.
I appreciate your taking time to solicit comments regarding the redistricting plan proposed by the city to address the population changes that the city planner discussed. Having reviewed the map, though, and the statistics on the city's website, and having spoken with Mr. Joel Duke, I have concerns about the redistricting plan. My concerns are with regard to the proposed shapes of Council District Number 2. I say shapes in the plural because, as Mr. Duke pointed out, the proposed map shows that District 2 would be continued to be comprised of 2 geographic areas, one area to the north of downtown and another smaller area approximately 1.5 to 2 miles south of the first area. I'm concerned with the fact that, if adopted by this council, District 2 will cover 2 non-contiguous areas. My point of concern is that the proposed district does not meet the statutory requirement that municipal districts in Alabama be rectangular as far as practicable. The city of Prattville was reminded of this requirement as recently as 2000 in a written opinion from the Attorney General to Mr. E.M. Champion, who was then the city clerk treasurer. That Attorney General's opinion does not reference any court case saying that the city of Prattville is exempt. Anyone familiar with Attorney General's opinions know that they usually cite any court case that would be at variance with the statute. I failed to see how 2 non-contiguous geographic areas separated by as much as 2 miles can be identified as rectangular. In speaking with Mr. Duke the week of August 22nd, Mr. Duke stated that at one time District 2 was drawn as a majority-minority district. Apparently the original drawing of that district by the council was designed to comply with litigation coming out of federal court regarding at-large districts in general. However, the goal of a majority-minority district does not appear to be the motivation for the shape of District 2 any longer, since the proposed District 2 will be comprised of a voting age population that is approximately 50% white and approximately 45% black. Mr. Duke indicated in our conversation that it was not possible to draw a majority-minority council district given the population changes within the city. However, it would seem that if it's acceptable to draw a multi-part, single-member district that takes in 2 pockets of voters from across the city, the council would have explored adding other pockets of voters to the proposed District 2, and the map would reflect not only 2 non-contiguous parts, but perhaps 3, 4, or 5. To my knowledge, the council did not explore that option, and certainly the proposed map does not reflect such an effort. I'm not suggesting or advocating that the city redraw District 2 so that it includes additional pockets of voters that are not contiguous. I raise this point to illustrate my inability to discern the purpose for drawing such an oddly shaped district that appears to conflict with the mandates of state law. I'm left with a question, especially since the city is not attempting to meet the goal of a majority-minority district. Why has the council put forth a redistricting plan that strays from statutory language that commands districts to be as rectangular as practicable? As noted before, this language is not new to the city, since the requirement was highlighted in the AG opinion issued to Mr. Champion in 2000. Additionally, the phrase compact and contiguous is one of the touchstones of redistricting cases in federal courts when describing land that is to be encompassed by a district. Therefore, I respectfully request that the council not adopt this proposal until the citizens of Prattville can be assured that it complies with state law and precedents established by the federal courts. The city has until the spring of 2012 to finalize its redistricting plan, so there certainly appears to be no reason to rush the process without first making sure the city is on sound legal ground. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Any questions of Mr. Packard? Mr. Duke, would you like to address any of his concerns, or Mr. McDowell, since you're our legal counsel?
I'll happy to answer anything I can.
there were some legalities cited in Mr. Packard's statement, so I was concerned about.
I have not reviewed the AG's opinion in anticipation of tonight. I do know that what he's saying, yes, state statute may say this, but the feds can override what a state says. So as of right now, we're still under DOJ. I mean, we cannot not go forward without getting DOJ approval. That's a must.
Right. Okay.
So until we don't have to do that, you're bound by that, as I understand it. Now, by no means have Joel and I have talked, yes.
Okay.
Have I delved into what he addressed? No. Have not seen it, reviewed it, or seen it.
Mr. Packard, we will delve into this, and we will. Yes, by all means, go right ahead. You have the floor.
As I'm sure the city attorney is aware, and I say this respectfully, the Department of Justice only reviews pre-clearance packages when they know that the action has been finalized at the state, county, or municipal level, and there's an assumption that it meets all the requirements of state law. Department of Justice doesn't necessarily override state law. It would be a federal court that would have to decide that the mandates, for example, in this case, the Voting Rights Act, would override the provisions of the state law. So I'm not so sure that it's all that settled that the Department of Justice would approve this again if there were a complaint filed against it this time around. My understanding from Mr. Duke was that during the 2004 redistricting process that there were no complaints at the public hearing that was held. And although I've requested the pre-clearance package from the Department of Justice, they've replied that obviously with the amount of redistricting going on right now, that's not available yet, but they will get it to me. So I don't know at this point whether there were any complaints filed with Department of Justice back then either. Sorry, there was another point he made that I was going to respond to, but I can't remember what it was now.
Okay, well, you provided that to us in writing.
Yes, I've got this
I will assure you that I personally will review that and we'll research that before a vote's taken.
Yeah, the Attorney General's opinion, by the way, the question that was presented by Mr. Champion at the time was a question about how the city of Prattville would determine what its voting age population was and whether it would use the federal census or there's a provision in state law that allows a city to conduct its own census. And at the time, the Central Alabama Planning Commission apparently had been contracted with to do the redistricting, and they had worked out a mathematical formula to determine what the population of the city of Prattville was, and the city had asked for an opinion regarding whether or not that would be acceptable. And in the course of explaining that, that's when the Attorney General mentioned the requirements about it being, rectangular districts as close as possible. Okay. And as I said before, they didn't cite any court case that seemed to say that it could be at variance with that statute.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council on the proposed redistricting plan? Anyone at all? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to bring the public hearing to a close.
Real quick, Mr. Reiniger, the purpose of this hearing tonight was, of course, to gain information. If it's if the council is interested, those items can be addressed and information provided. So we can certainly look into that. The other item I wanted to bring up is that if anyone is present and is not signed in, we need record of their attendance. There's a sign-in sheet here at the clerk's desk and one in the back.
Okay.
If you get everyone's signature, that'd be great.
Please sign in either at the back door or with the city clerk before you leave if you haven't already done that. Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Councilman Bowles moves that we adjourn. Is there a second? Second by Dr. Miller. Any opposition to this? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We're adjourned. We will have a work session at Doster Community Center in 20 minutes. We'll try to convene about